Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out here in the shop, and I'm here today to talk to you about one of the hottest new techniques. I know you heard about it, micro jigs. Micro jigs. And basically, micro jigs are ultra finesse spinning rod jigs. And the reason these micro jigs are so amazing is they're a combination of a traditional skirted jig and the finesse profile of a Ned rig. Think about that. You're taking a skirted jig and a Ned rig and you're combining them in one bait. Micro jig fishing, I first saw it in Japan. Really took off in Japan, spread to the West Coast. And once I saw how effective these things were in tough conditions, clear water, and heavily pressured fish. Once I saw that, I basically said I have to add this to my arsenal. So I want to talk to you a little bit about these micro jigs. This happens to be the Missile Jigs micro jig. Comes in 3 different sizes. Comes in a 1/16, an 1/8, and a 3/16. I like all 3 sizes, but the 1/8 ounce for sure is my #1 size. I want to talk to you a little bit about the 2 ways I'm going to fish it, a couple little modifications, and then I want you to go out and fish this thing and watch how effective it is. You know, if you look at it, it's basically a little skirted jig. It's got just a really small, little super sharp Japanese style hook on it. And the most important thing in a micro jig is that line tie. And if you look at the head of that bait, it's a 90-degree line tie. It's a straight up and down line tie. And that's super critical to get this bait to ride straight. You always want it to ride straight. You know, if you look at it, it doesn't have a fiber guard on it. This is a no guard jig the way it stands right now. And when there's no cover to very sparse cover, I don't add a guard. I literally leave it like that, like an exposed head. And, you know, a lot like how I would fish a Ned rig. You know, the difference is a Ned rig, when you pause it, it just sort of lays there. But because it's got this micro skirt on it, when you pause that bait, that skirt is really gonna flare and expand. You know, the next thing is the trailer. And a lot of good trailers out there. The thing that I like is adding a trailer that has just a little bit of kick to it. And my favorite trailer for the micro jig that's a Berkley Power Bait Water Bug. It's a brand new bait I did with Berkley Power Bait. And you know, the only thing I do is I like to trim it down so it fits the micro jig. So this is, you know, if you look at it, it's a 3 3/4 inch bait. And I'm going to take it and bite it or rip it so that there's just about an inch of that tail section left. And if you look at it, it's got that kicker at the bottom. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and thread it straight up on this micro jig. And when you look at it, look at this. Look at that perfect little trailer for that bait. It's perfect. And it's going to give it just a little bit of kick. And when you stop it and pause it, especially when you hit something, that skirt's going to flare. And then the second part to this micro jig is when you're fishing in heavy cover situations. And I love this thing just as much around wood, grass, docks, rocks, all that stuff. But in that case, I want to add a weed guard. And the nice thing about the Missile micro jigs, it comes 2 to a pack with 2 fiber guards that you could add to this bait. And this is a super simple modification you could do on the fly. If you look at it, we've got a little hole just below that 90-degree line tie. And there's my little fiber guard that comes with the jig. And all I'm going to do is get some super glue, your favorite super glue. This happens to be the Spike It Fix-A-Lure. And I like this super glue because it's got a little brush applicator on it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to just use that brush and get about an 1/8 of an inch of glue on the tip of that little guard. And then all you're going to do is just stick it right in that little hole. Just push it right into that hole. And once you push it in that hole, Just going to let that thing air dry just for a couple minutes. And when that thing air dries, now you've got a skirted micro jig for cover situations. All right, last but not least, let's tie one of these things on. And I want to show you how effective this micro jig is because of that skirt. And I want you to look at how it flares like a traditional skirted jig, but it has the subtle action and scooting like a Ned rig. So it's a combination bait. Let's look at it in this tank. Now I want you to look at the action this thing has, especially as it rests on the bottom, okay? So you got that subtle fall. Notice some legs kicking, but look, when it stops, watch that skirt expand on the bottom. Watch it. I don't even have to move it, and you can see that skirt breathing, that skirt expanding on the stop. So you can actually drag it like a Ned rig, and when you stop it, that skirt breathes and expands. That's the key to a micro jig. Part skirted jig, part Ned rig. Try this in your arsenal. Tough fishing, clear water, cold water. That thing's going to catch a ton of fish. Mike Iaconelli out here in the shop talking about the micro jig.